So I'm going to take a slight aside at this point, because I mentioned level 11 a couple of times, so especially for the kind of research stuff. So this is getting ready for university study. And okay, so when I'm talking about level 11, I'm talking about the SCQF levels for us, for Scotland. So it's QAA in England, it's SCQF in Scotland. So just, if anyone's not aware of what the levels are that we babble on about, have a look, okay? So it's a good website. You just search for SCQF, you'll get the website, and if you click on one of the levels links, so this is the framework where basically we base all our work around. So this is right up from school. So your kind of schools right up to, so anyone know where university starts? Which level? 7? Yeah, so we're up here. So 7, 8 to second year, 9 is degree year, 10 is honours year, 11 is masters, 12? PhD. Okay, so there's different expectations at the different levels. So all of our learning outcomes that we put in modules and courses all come from these levels, or should be aligned to these levels. Okay, so when we're asking for master's critical analysis, it's because that's the learning level you're expected to be at level 11. Okay, so if you went up to PhD level, to doctorate level, you'd be expecting to find gaps in research, you'd be expecting to produce novel work, whereas at level 11, there can be some novelty in your dissertation, in your project. There can be some new work, but it's not expected. You know, you're not expected to do an awful lot of new work. And at level 10, it's a little bit less. Okay, and there's subtle differences. And what you can do is you can actually go in and have a look at the levels. There's quite a good document. If you go into the level descriptors document and you just go down, so it's got a very detailed description on all the different levels. You can read through the whole thing if you like. But there's some quite good summary pages near the end. Okay, so level 12. So we're talking about, this is PhD, so we're talking about, you know, research and equivalent work, blah, 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 making a significant contribution to the development in the field. Okay, so a significant contribution to research, that's your kind of key level 12 goal, or one of the key level 12 kind of learning goals. Okay, so we've got knowledge and understanding, practical and applied stuff, cognitive skills, communication, etc. So if we go up to level 11 and have a look at those ones, so you can kind of compare and contrast is really what I'm saying. You know, if you look at level 10 and level 12, you can see what the differences are. Okay, and if you come from undergrad, some of you guys have, you can see hopefully, you know, the difference goes from level 10, where we're looking at specialising in subjects, you know, understanding of more specialisms that you did at level 9, and specific sort of research methods and such, like applying things. So it's kind of specialising in subject areas. So it's learning about an area like network security maybe, but specialising in parts of it and becoming a kind of expert in a small part. So for your honours dissertation, your honours project, you know, there is that level of critical understanding, which is the second point there, which you don't get at some of the lower levels, but also specialising in a subject. Okay, and when you come up to level 11, what you'll find is the descriptions. If you go into the detailed descriptions, there's just more specialisms, okay? So you got a line here that's good, a critical awareness, so knowing the good and bad things and being able to analyse them within a subject discipline sector, so within our security, network security in this particular case, and one of the specialisms. So we're looking at perimeter security, for example, okay? So we're hoping you become a master in the area and specialise in particular specialisms of the topics, okay? So for your master's project, you know, you're hoping you focus in on one area and become a real sort of master in that area, and at the level where you're looking at analysis and looking at evaluation, you're looking at synthesizing things together, being able to apply things and then be able to evaluate them against other work and against kind of aims of what you've tried to do in the first place. Okay, so you can have a look through those, and there's some good ones there about applied stuff as well at this level. So definitely at some point have a look at these things, you know, and again come back to it. Make sure you're thinking at the right sort of level. Okay, so that's just to sort of kick you off with the research and design. So you know, if you've got a bit of research, you make some decisions, and then you justify those decisions, your design decisions from the research. And then in this part, obviously, we're going to implement something. So as you said, you know, maybe GNS, maybe some screenshots, maybe a what would we start with? Maybe looking at the diagram, yeah. Maybe start thinking about an overall, I think I maybe popped that in actually. Yeah, so maybe diagrams for the components. You know, if you don't want to create an entire system, it could be, this is my egress component that I'm going to test, and this is my design, and these are justifications, and here's how I've implemented it. So what else might go in here then? What else might go in the implementation section? What might you do for your implementation, and how might we write it up? What might go in your report, and what might you actually do? So GNS and such like, yep. So what might go in the report? How do we show that we've done these things? Screenshots maybe, maybe some configuration, maybe some diagrams of topologies, that sort of thing. Yep, well we've got a separate section for the testing. A good question. So the question is whether you have to describe each bit of configuration. So what I would say is, you know, you're trying to get across within the page count, you know, within a couple of pages what you've done, okay, and to show us what you've done and to show us the level you're at. So you're not going to have space to put every single bit of configuration in maybe, so why don't you appendix some stuff and then take interesting snippets and describe them, okay? So one key thing, and it's a bit of a bugbear of mine, is don't put diagrams in and don't put things in and expect me to interpret what you've done, okay? If you're going to put things in, you tell me what you've done, tell me why they're there, tell me why they're important, the strengths and weaknesses of them, give me something to read and describe the diagram. Don't just plonk a diagram in, especially not one straight out of a paper. It's the one thing that all students do when you're supervising projects. It's the classic, you get the lit review and it's just got diagrams and it's referenced brilliantly from a fantastic paper. There's no description, it doesn't tell you anything. It shows you nothing about your understanding. It shows you might have found a good paper, but it doesn't actually tell me anything when I'm marking it about what you understand, about the diagram or the code or your configuration or anything else. Okay, so make sure you describe things, and the same with testing. Okay, so if we go on to testing, so you maybe use some test tools. You know, we've used some tools in the lab, some quite basic things. What sort of tools for testing have we used for some of the stuff we've done? Nmap, for example, you know, just pings for connectivity, that sort of thing. We can use those. We can look at other ones like Firewalk and some of the other firewall tools, perhaps. But again, you know, pop some screenshots in, but put some discussion. Put something that shows something, that evaluates, that discusses what you've done and the good and bad points about it. Okay, don't just throw screenshots in and expect to get marks, because it doesn't really explain, it doesn't really show what you've actually understood from doing the stuff. Okay, so if you've got a test strategy, explain it, and then show your results, talk about your results, discuss interesting things, highlight things you thought might happen and didn't happen or did happen, link back. So testing, kind of discussion around the testing, but also evaluation. So evaluating whether decisions you made here and what you did here was good, bad, or ugly. Okay, so linking back to these things, and again, this is really good practice for your dissertation and other projects. So all research work is like this. You're always evaluating against other work in the field, work which you use, sources which you used, and the kind of main aim of the project. You know, were you successful in implementing the ingress filtering? What techniques did you use? Were they good or bad? You know, explain why. Okay? Yep. So it gives you a starting point anyway.
Sorry.
Yes.
If I put down research and design for title, and the subtitle just has honeypot.
Yeah, absolutely fine. Yeah, no problem. Or just a paragraph. You know, we'll know which part to mark if it's clear. Okay. So just try and be straightforward. It'll be. It may. I don't know. Maybe this sounds too straightforward, but so many times when we get our courseworks in, they're all over the place. They make no sense. They don't align to anything we've asked for. You know, they don't have the right level. There's no references cited, or there's no references listed at the end, or various things like that. So just try and be thorough. Okay. So we've kind of gone through that. Conclusion. If you don't know what a conclusion is, please research it. Okay. Go and look at the supplementary materials and find out a bit about academic writing and what things are meant to be in an introduction and a conclusion and a literature review. You know, I mean, many students maybe don't know what literature review is, so look it up to start with. Make sure you're on the right track. Do not guess. It's just not going to work. Okay, so we've given you some. Yes, we've given you some links here.
Are we restricted to any routing protocol, or we can?
Routing protocols, don't mind. Don't mind, yeah. And again, you know, think about what we've asked. You know, if it doesn't ask for, you know, routing, then just keep it simple, okay? Or miss it out altogether. Test the things without, you know, distant networks, okay? So try and keep it simple. If you need routing, then fine, but keep it like simple, like we've done in the labs, rather than trying to implement things. You know, that's like my VLAN example. Don't try and implement things we're not really trying to assess you on. Because you're not really going to get graded on it, okay? I mean, you can go to town, it's absolutely fine, but just remember, you're not going to get graded on things we've not asked for.
Yeah.
Okay?
Evaluation, if possible, can use graphs as well.
Graphs would be fantastic. If you get as far as actual tables of results, and graphs basically are evaluation, a method of evaluating those tables of results. So if you get numbers that you can graph and discuss the graphs and why they're there, so why you've graphed something in a certain way to analyze and evaluate something, ace. But you may not, you know, that would be exactly the type of thing you would do in a dissertation, yeah. So we've got this kind of get ready for study skills, and actually if you go into it, what you'll find is, I think it's here somewhere, what you'll find is it's actually quite a lot about academic writing and reading and stuff. So it's quite a nice website. It's fairly new. It's just last year I think they created this. So it's got some nice stuff about academic writing and reports and other things as well. But if I have a quick look through this, it's definitely worth a read through. You know, some of those things I've covered already. You know, there's the planning, splitting things up, analysing the task, thinking about it, planning your time. So this is quite good. So this is they've called it a spider diagram. So this is like a mind map. It's quite a good way of doing an overview of how your papers and how your sources fit together. So you might have a subject. I typically write the references in here, and then you might have subjects around this. You know, this could be perimeter, firewalls, and you could have different firewall types, or you could have ingress filtering, and these could be different things to do with ingress filtering. You can write the kind of papers here, or the sources, and then you can write all things down. So it's a good way of kind of mapping out your research, your different areas, and maybe the papers that cover these things. So you can come back and look at 2 or 3 sources and say, this is the theme for that part of the lit review. I'm going to write that up. I'm going to take these 4 or 5 sources and I'm going to write up the critical analysis that I've taken notes on this particular topic, and these are the papers that I want to use for that particular theme that you're writing about. So obviously this is quite a small scale thing. I'm not expecting pages and pages and pages of sources, but it's still a good way of doing your research. You may not use all the sources, you know, so it's quite a good way of doing things. So there's lots of techniques like this. There's grids, matrices where you can write themes along the top and write papers and write notes in. There's writing notes on the papers themselves. There's using referencing databases, which I'll touch on at the end. If you want to kind of take this forward and think about using the same sort of stuff towards your dissertation, or if you want to keep all your references together and then maybe be able to use them in the future. Okay, so there's lots of different ways of doing things. So definitely, you know, take a bit of time and look through some of this research materials. So this is talking about researching. So this is what we'll go on to have a quick look at shortly. I'll not bore you too long. So this is talking about getting into the researching using the library facilities and using the library search facilities for peer-reviewed papers and such like. And again, there is a video on that in your dissertation module, which you can have a look at too, which goes into great detail about how to use that system. I think for this coursework, you'd be fine probably with Google and Google Scholar and such like, which we'll have a wee look at. But feel free to go a bit further and use the library system too. There's a bit about academic writing tips and things like that. So there's plenty of material on there to get you going. And as I say, if you come back and keep reusing the material, Yeah, so my example, you know, what's in an introduction, what's in a conclusion. Make sure you go and read the material about those things. Find out what, you know, that you're doing the correct thing. If you're doing a conclusion, you should be summarizing, you should be highlighting the key things. You know, you shouldn't be bringing new material in at that stage. So just that kind of basic understanding of what we're looking for. Okay. So we'll have a quick look at this. And when I say quick, I'll try and make it quick. Yeah, so this is a document I wrote a while back. Yeah, it's still 2012. I thought it was actually updated since then. Yeah, I'll maybe have a wee look, see if I've got a newer one. So this is trying to give you some basic kind of how to get started with some researching. Okay, so probably, you know, anything we want to research. You know, I want a new pair of jeans. Where do we start? We probably start with Google. So it's the same thing. You know, if we want to start looking for honeypots and we really don't know what honeypots are, or we don't know what a conclusion is, or we don't know what an introduction is, or we don't know anything, we definitely don't want honey boo boo. So we want honeypots, then, you know, it's a good starting point. You know, obviously we get quite a lot from Google. There's lots of interesting ways you can use Google. We'll go into some Google hacking in the pen testing module next term, or whenever you take that module, and how to misuse or use better the Google search bar or box. So there's tons of stuff there. You can have a look through for background reading. So again, for these projects, you may find that Google's actually quite good because you're going to find technical sources this way. So you know that there is a SANS paper which tend to be quite good. So you might find lots of stuff there. So what if we wanted to look at a little bit more academic? Where might we start? Google Scholar, excellent. So yeah, it's back to the top. It was Harriet Watts Scholar page. We got to the top. They must have done some swindling. So I usually knock patents out. This is quite a good way of quickly getting some academic peer-reviewed stuff in there. So again, if we just let's have a quick look for honeypots to start with. Okay, so there's quite a lot of honeypots there. So how would we filter this? How might we start filtering this and looking for different types of things? Say again? So citations. So we've got citations here. Who's cited this? So what will that give us? Where would that take us from this paper? The papers that have used that paper as a reference. So that kind of takes us forward in time, yeah? So if I go and look at that, you know, it's quite a good way of seeing how important the paper is as well at a kind of very general level. You know, if it's got one citation or 10,000, it kind of gives you an idea of who's used the paper, whether it's got some good stuff in it or not. But also, that'll take you forward in time, so you can work forward from papers like that. How might we work back from papers?
You look at the citation list in the paper.
Yep.
And see what they've cited.
So if that'll load. So obviously if you're off campus, especially for distance learners, you may get a page like this, and when you click PDF it may say no access, because obviously from the university campus network we have access to a lot of these papers. So we've got access to a lot of ACM and IEEE stuff, and things like Science Direct. So usually there is somewhere where you can, usually across here somewhere where you can actually just say log in with your, what's the word I'm looking for Napier? Yeah, it's the university, I can't remember, the institution, yeah. It's usually an institutional login, okay? And you just click that and you say Napier and it takes you to your login via Shibboleth, okay? Or the other one. So if you're off campus, you should be able to get most of these things as well. You should have, yeah, off campus, yep. You should be able to log in through Napier. Should have. Yep. If there's any problems with that, let me know, you know, especially the distance chaps.
You can go in via the library and then use the library's easy proxy.
You can also do that, yeah, which is another excellent thing to look at, going in via the library system. So there is links on the course web page, especially for the distance guys, on the actual, you know, the course web page on Moodle, the courses level web page. Yep, there's some off-campus library links there which will tell you how to do that. Go in via the library and use their proxy and go through that, which may stop you having to log in all the time. Yeah.
Yeah, some of the articles has got no university login. They require you to register. And
Yeah. Sometimes, yeah. So I mean, for this coursework, don't worry too much about those type articles. You know, if you're doing your dissertation and you find a key article which you really want, you know, you can apply through other universities. You can apply through the library systems, the national library systems. You know, and we can get those papers typically, even if we have to buy them and get them, you know, posted, sort of thing. So But yeah, we'll come back to that. There's Gordon. So another way of doing these sort of things is to that's not much use, is it? All right, we'll come back to that. So I've got like a list of bookmarked journals, good journals for our area. So I'll go through a journal, maybe a Science Direct Network Security journal. That's quite a good journal for this area, obviously. And I'll just have a look at the journal, and I can have a look at the most recent publication, and then last month's publication, and the months before, or quarterly, or whatever it is. So, I mean, that's quite a good way of doing things. I'm not sure why this is, just the resolution's a bit wonky here. Yeah, that's not so good. But so security material, so I've got blogs and I've got journals in here. Okay, so that's going to list of some of the journals. So you've got things like computers and security is quite good, which we've just actually had a paper published in this morning, which is quite good. A new type of reflection attack, in actual fact. We've got IEEE, we've got things like B-sides, and I'm just looking for it. Yeah, so there's network security, Science Direct. So if we go into something like that, what you'll find is you can just have a look through the latest publications. So this is, so obviously I haven't looked at it since August 2015, so we've got 2 new publications out there. So we can just actually click on these. Well, that's actually the one that's up there. And we can have a look through the journal articles that have just been published. So it's obviously not possibly the best way of finding specific articles for a subject, but it's quite a good thing to be able to do. There's actually quite a good email system you can set up, which tells you when there's a new publications out in your area, and you can even do keyword searches on it, and it'll email you and say, the new Science Direct Network Security journal's out, and it's got these things in it. Okay, so it's probably quite a good thing to start taking an interest in as well. So some quite interesting things here, obviously. We've got DOS we've been talking about. We've got DNS attacks, which we've been talking about. Maths with Python might be interesting, so I'm teaching that tomorrow. Have a little look at that. Women in STEM, which is very popular at the moment. Just had a talk yesterday. So that's another kind of small aside. So if we go back to Scholar, so how else might we filter here? How might we kind of narrow things down? What if we want to just look at recent things? Yep, so at the moment we're on any time. So if we say I want to see what's been done this year, just very, very quickly, for a quick kind of overview, I can see that there's actually been some recent work in it. Okay, so this is one of the reasons we gave you this as part of the project. There is actually some recent work in the area. So I don't know, I've got one paper I'll pop up on Moodle, which was actually a malware paper. So at first I thought, this isn't really much use, but when I had a look at the abstract, actually it has malware detection with the honeypot, and it also has malicious connection detection. So they ran like 2 parallel experiments with the same honeypot. So actually the second half of the paper, or the second part of the research, was very, very relevant. So that's the sort of thing, when you're reading papers, you have to assess whether the papers are of much use to you. So you've got low and high interaction. So honeypots do all different things, and they're used for different things. So you have to have a look, try and track down exactly the sort of things you're looking for. So maybe look for the last couple of years, and so I'd be starting to think about keywords straight away. So when you're doing a big project, you're going to keep lists of keywords you've tried, combinations of keywords, and what you'll find is the more research you do, the better you get at it. The more keywords you know which types of keywords to look for, you know how to find the right keywords. So things like taxonomies and surveys are quite good. If you're looking to find a hole in an area, survey papers are always good because they usually cover an area and then identify gaps in the research and things like that. Taxonomies are quite good because they tend to classify a topic, a subject you're looking at. So you could maybe look at taxonomy of honeypots. So I put in perimeter there just to see if there's anything that jumps out straight away about perimeter things. So that's quite an interesting, advanced persistent threats. That's quite a nice angle to have a look at. If we want to know if this paper is any good, what are we going to do first? What are we going to read the abstract? Good answer. Excellent. So the first thing we're going to do with the first thing I'm going to do is read your introduction, obviously. First thing that anyone does when they pick up a journal or a dissertation or a PhD, they're going to read the abstract and introduction, probably read the conclusion second, and then they're going to see if the abstract describes the work and what's been done and the contribution. The conclusions are going to expand on the contribution, and the introduction is going to give you some background to the problem area, to the research problem. So if you read those things, you usually can assess whether you want to bother reading the rest of the paper or not. Okay. What else might we be interested in a paper when we have a look at a paper like this? Who the authors are, where, which research group they came from. Excellent. What else?
What about the world of published?
What type of journal it is, where it's published, how important it is, what level it's at. So all these kind of things, in a small way, you want to be doing that for this project. You want to be assessing your sources, and more so for bigger projects. Okay, so in this paper, we can read, it's a bad example, it's got a tiny abstract, but it basically tells you usually what the problem is, what they've tried to do, probably the key technologies they've used, and probably then the key contribution they've made, and summarise their results. Okay, so I don't know, that's not particularly good in terms of that, but what I would do next is go right to the end, and I'd be having a little look at the conclusion. So again, this looks like some kind of quite basic paper, which is picked up on some quite specific APTs. So we talked a little bit about Stuxnet in one of the lectures. Dooku's a newer, similar type advanced malware threat. Flame is a more recent version, which do slightly different things, and Gauze is an even more recent version. So these are all based on similar code, similar to Stuxnet. So these are all probably state-sponsored malware APTs. So that's very specific actually, but it's describing how you might use honeypot. So it's a very kind of, I don't know, it's a really basic sort of paper, that one. But if we get another paper maybe and have a quick look. So
on the references, Rich,
yes.
have we got like a limit of citations we could?
Well, not really, but if you do a citation every 4 words, I'm going to get bored. It's probably not, but. I mean, if you're citing, every paragraph, and you're citing where you got work from, and it's good.
So let me ask, what's the minimum number of papers or references?
The minimum references, well, there wouldn't really be a minimum, but I mean, I would expect at this level, you to be getting up to a page of references or something, or half a page at minimum kind of thing. I mean, someone will hand in a work with 2 or 3 references, and it's just not enough. It's not really showing. I mean, how does that show you're reading? How does it even show you've read anything, or never mind your understanding? It just doesn't show in any way. So we're looking for not a lot of sources, but a good range, from different types of source, from different type technical. Oh yeah, absolutely, yeah. If we go back to the question. References and presentation are worth more than your conclusions, for example, an introduction. So, we're looking for, the actual technical doing it, the citations and your reference list at the end. So exactly the same as the papers we're looking at. If I can find one. It's exactly the same as the papers we're looking at there. We'll just use that terrible paper again. I'm saying terrible, it might be fantastic. I should read it first before I start making judgments, academic judgments on things. But so all the references they've used are at the end. So there's not many there. There's things like Bruce Schneier, which looks like a blog or some sort of post or something. But so this is IEEE. We've asked you to use Harvard, I think, for this one, because that's typically the university standard. So IEEE is usually used for very technical work, where you might be referencing lots of different things in the same paragraph. So it's short. This is your citation for IEEE, and it, you might say reference blah 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 from these papers, and you might say 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, whereas Harvard is surname and year. Okay, so it's going to take up more room, but that's fine for this one. So you're going to have a reference list at the end, and you're going to cite all your work. Okay, so again, that's not a fantastic example, but you can see they've cited, where they've got these things from. So almost every paragraph there is cited with some sort of source. Okay, so let's go back to this and have a quick look through, because this is my little document, which is a kind of starting guide. So it's showing you how to do some Google stuff. That's a little bit of Google hacking there, I think. Google Books is another one, which we didn't actually do, but Google Books, if you go to Google Books, absolutely tons of stuff online. Sometimes quite good for background reading, even books on specific subjects, say honeypots, for example. You could find a book which is on a really specific type of honeypot, but usually the first couple of chapters are introductory, you know, so good background reading in Google Books. So have a play with Google Books as well. And then Scholar, so we dive straight in there. We've had a look. That looks a wee bit out of date. This was the university's library search link. So that new link used to be the way you do it. I'm not sure if it's exactly the same, but again, no, it's slightly different now. Yeah. So you
Just go to
easy proxy. Yeah. So if you go to the dissertation Moodle module, there's a whole video on using their stuff there. These are some links here. I'm not sure whether that plagiarism still is the correct link. I need to look at that because they've changed the website around. But there is a guide to plagiarism and referencing, which you can look up online. I think it's probably linked from that other document I gave you. This is a good one, which I always give to all my dissertation students, so honours or masters. This is an excellent. So Freezebanks started off with academic phraseology, so how to word academic documents, how to use references, how to not boringly do the same way of using references every time. So it gives you all sorts of things about how to write critically, but it's also got some other interesting stuff on it. So it's got lots of things about writing, but it's also got this link here, so useful links, and it's got a particularly good website, if I can get it to load. So, which one is it? I think it's this one, yeah. So Toronto, this one's quite nice, especially when you're starting out. So there's lots of links here, you know, a little bit confusing, but this one's quite good because it's very compact. So each topic has a set of subtopics, so you can have a look at planning organisation, researching, using resources, types of writing, and there's kind of subtopics. So it sounds a bit wordy and like there's lots in here, but actually, if you have a look, something like that, you'll find it's a page. They're all about a page. They're not enormous, so it's quite good. You know, it's little sections you can go back to and use as reference. So I always get my students looking at this. I think it's an excellent website. We actually have one here as well, which one of the professors has moved on doing other things now. It's still kind of kicking around, but I like this because it's very short and compact, so it's quite good. So you have a look at that Toronto website. So definitely do a little bit of work on the project. Have a look at some of this research methodology stuff and resources, because it is very, very important. Okay. Where am I? Okay. So this is referencing. So this is kind of our last little section we'll have a wee look at. So there's lots of ways of doing referencing. Now, when I started doing research, your way of doing referencing was get a big black box, print off all your papers, write index numbers at the top, write notes on all your papers, put them in a big box and cross-reference the index numbers. Okay, and when you had to do a document, you did it in LaTeX, and you either did them all manually, so you did all your references manually, typed them all in and correctly formatted them based on the document you can get from the library on reference formatting. So a book's formatted differently in your reference list from a paper, from a technical white paper. Okay, so all your references are different formats for the different types which you need to look at. Or nowadays, you can just use Word or a plugin and a database manager. Okay, so Word has its own database manager in it, so you can create a reference manager, I should say, a reference database. You can create your own little database in Word. You go to the references, I'll show you in a sec, and you can just create everything in a Word document. You can export the thing and use it in other Word documents, or you can link it to a proper reference database, which is probably worth having a look at, and I'll show you why in a sec. So I used to use LaTeX with a BibTeX database behind it, but nowadays I have actually moved to using Mendeley. So as you go, I would be using one of these tools to record your references. Okay, A lot of people won't do it, but it is definitely the best way of doing things is to put your references in. If you read the thing, you think, I'm going to use this paper, put it in the database. It'd just be much easier when it comes to using it. Okay, so so if I've got Word here, I've got Mendeley here, I can have a look at that. So references, so there is a Word plugin here, not a Word plugin, I think it comes as part of Word now. It used to be a plugin. So for example, I've been doing some teaching work in here, so I didn't actually bother putting them all into my big database, my external Mendeley database. So I just created little databases of references for some of my pedagogical research I was doing recently on analytics and analysing student behaviour on Moodle and such like. So there's some stuff in there, and you can copy them into the current list and just use them. So that's your kind of database. It's not a very good resolution to show you things, but that's your kind of entry that's going to come up in the references list at the end. And what you can do is you can just type away. I'm not going to say I think. This paper demonstrates something. Demonstrate something. That's not right. I'll come back to that. And you can insert a citation. You can add a new source and create something in the database. So there wasn't anything in the database. So if I copy something to the current database, and then I go back and I say insert a citation with the Word plugin, it gives me the option of these references that I've got in my database. So I can put that in and it'll cite it for you. Okay? And then all we do is once we've finished our document, we just say insert our bibliography. Okay, so we want basically our references, and it'll insert them for you, and it'll format them in the correct format. So that's actually inserted too. So that's all references in the database rather than works cited. So what you actually want is works cited. So you want to get rid of that, and you want to insert the. Oh, what's happening here? You want to actually just do works cited, and you can just rename this references. Okay. Oh, let's actually put both of them in as well. That's odd. Say it again? I'm not sure. Yeah, it usually just puts in the ones you've used, the ones you've cited throughout the document. So we want you to cite all the stuff. And the good thing here is if you want to change anything, so that's running in APA at the moment. If I want to change to IEEE, all I do is that and it reformats it all for you. Okay? So I would definitely be using that at a pure minimum, an absolute minimum, I should say. I'd be using Word for that. Now what I use, and for various reasons, which will become apparent in a second, I use a thing called Mendeley. So this is a Mendeley desktop. You can just use the web one if you like. The desktop one's got its advantages. So that's a pile of papers in there. And one of the best things is you can actually just point this at directories. Okay, so, and why will become apparent. Let's get a new one. Okay, so for example, you know, there's some stuff in here. So there's some IDS references here, and I can just point Mendeley at this folder, and it will pick up all the PDFs, and it will try and take out the appropriate authors and title and things like that. Okay, so if I actually have a look up here, what you'll find is there's different statuses here. So some of these haven't actually been entered properly into the database yet. They're sitting, waiting. So they've tried to pick up the title and the author and things. And all you do is you go through, you click on them, you have a little look, you tidy it up, you make sure the date's right, the author's right, things like that, and then it sticks it in the database, and then you can use it. Okay, so that's that's a big benefit. If you drop 20 papers in there, it'll do a lot of the work for you. You don't have to manually create the references and all the metadata. So I don't know what I've got in here. Let's have a wee search for, I'll tell you what, let's use it. So if we go to the document, what you can then do is if you install Mendeley, it's really simple, it's quite quick. I've got a little document if anybody wants it. You can actually, instead of using this stuff, you can use this Mendeley plugin. Okay, so you just go to Mendeley Tools, install plugin. It takes 10 seconds, and you get this little, very similar to the Word referencing plugin. You get the Mendeley plugin, and we can use the entire Mendeley database. So let's see if I've got anything about honeypots. So I've actually got several things by the looks of it. It's not a very good resolution. So there's actually quite a few. Well, there's not that many. There's probably more than that, but so that's building Kyoto data sets. Yeah, I definitely have more on honeypots than that. Yeah. No, I should have synced it. I synced it this morning. Anyway, so I can use that. It formats the citation for me, and again, I can just do the same thing. I can insert the bibliography, and that's all from Mendeley. Okay, so really, really easy compared to what it used to be like. So definitely, I would advise using Mendeley because you can just put all the stuff in. You might use these papers in the future. It's really quite straightforward. Take you 10 minutes to install it, and it's a good thing to use. And then obviously all your referencing's done for you. It's a very good thing to get into the way of using. So you might need a little bit more lead time on this project, but then when you do another coursework, you're gonna, it's all set up and ready to go. Okay. So I don't want to bore you for too long. Any questions on any of that stuff? I think I covered.
Sorry, what's the expectation says maximum of 12 pages. What if you exceed, let's say, go to 15 pages? What's your time?
If you hand in 15 pages, technically I won't mark the last 3. But just try and not hand in 15 pages. If you've got 15 pages and you've got some lovely diagrams in there and you put extra diagrams in, I don't know, it might be okay. But I don't want 3 extra pages of waffle. Some of the skill of this is scoping the writing. So it's academic writing as part of the skill. So scoping it correctly, planning it out, hitting the right marks, doing the critical analysis, hitting the right things, and not just having lots of stuff, not just having lots of background information. So, concentrate on what we're trying to do, concentrate on the spec, the details and what we've asked for. Don't give us lots of things we haven't asked for. If you're not sure, come and ask.
So you get penalized for that then?
You won't get penalised. Some people take marks off you if you put too much in. Gordon always threatens to rip the back pages off and throw them away. I just look at it and try and be fair, but yeah, I'm not going to mark masses of extra stuff.
So if you do 9 pages, you get penalized for that?
No, of course not. No, a maximum of sort of 10 to 12 pages.
Right.
Yeah, the 12's your leeway. Your 2 extra pages there's your leeway. So to try and keep it, concise and try and hit what we're looking for.
The appendix will be maybe 3-4 pages to be just appendix, which doesn't count the word count, which is fine.
Absolutely. So the appendix doesn't count, but don't put all your stuff in appendix and reference it. That's not going to work. It's not going to fly. Okay. So just don't do it. We get that every time as well. 10 pages of text and 10 pages of appendix diagrams. I'm not going to flick back and forward looking at diagrams. Just put things in at a correct scale where we can read it, but small enough you can get lots in. Take snippets of stuff. Put a small part of a diagram. Don't put the entire thing. Don't duplicate things. I don't want to see 10 diagrams of Wireshark, capturing traffic. It's pointless. Think about it cleverly. Try and do something sensible. Okay, so that's probably enough for now.
Just a wee question about testing. Consider when you're not implementing the solution. So the testing side of things can be.
No, you are implementing something.
Something.
You're going to implement the
solution.
parts.
Yes.
No, but you can test each individual part to a certain extent.
Okay, that's the idea. Because of course in the testing, if we need to say that the approach worked and that didn't, clearly we need to do something. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean obviously you've got a scope here. It's not a PhD. It's not even it's not a huge project. You're trying to demonstrate your understanding in the space we've got and the time we've got.
Right. But
Okay.
It's a practical testing. So you.
Yeah, there's some
just
practical
set up
work.
things
Yeah,
and
some practical
create
work.
it, and then you try things.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, and just highlight the important things. Yeah, and you can appendix results and things. And we can look at that.
Cool.
Okay, that's great.